Good afternoon. It's good to be here. I've been here at Fort Hood for about the last 36 hours or so. I just want to have the opportunity to come back and talk to the community, give them an update on the Army, where we're at, and also have an opportunity to talk to the commanders. Had a great visit with 3 Corps and General Campbell talking about what's going on today in the Corps. Obviously, the Corps remains significantly committed to the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. We talked about that. I had meetings with company commanders, brigade and battalion commanders to talk about both what they're doing currently and to talk a little bit about the future of the Army. What I'd like to do now is just open it up to your questions.
General Doug Curran from KCEN. You were talking about the deficit cuts that Congress, they failed to do. In October, you mentioned to the Army Times that an army of 520,000 is reasonable with fighting 2 wars simultaneously. Facing all the cuts now, how do you plan to keep the Army strong, trained, and safe? And do you still think 520 is reasonable?
Well, what I would say is whatever size of the Army that we have, it's got to be one that is ready, modernized, and capable of meeting whatever tasks they're asked to do. As we have budget cuts, we are going to reduce our capacity, which will reduce our ability to respond to threats that are out there. So we're going to have to determine, depending on what level we end up at, what we can and can't do. And it's up to me, as well as the other Joint Chiefs, as we talk about the Joint Force, to ensure that we communicate what we'll be able to do and what we can't do. Well, I think it's about policy. It's about national strategy that's developed. And as we develop our national strategy, we will have a force that is developed in order to meet that strategy. But it will not be a strategy that will be as robust as it was in the past. It'll have to be something that's less.
JJ from Univision Spanish TV. With all those cuts, if they go into effect, how we're going to be able to make sure that all these soldiers that are coming back get all the programs and all the help, whether it's physical, mental, or whatever it is that they need, to make sure that they get all those programs. There's a lot of concern about that. Yeah,
our priority remains with our soldiers and families, and we will ensure that the programs remain in place that are there in order to support all our soldiers and our families who have gone through numerous deployments to ensure that they get the care that's necessary. And we'll continue to fund those programs. That's our priority, and we'll never walk away from that priority.
General, they're actually from the 4th Sentinel. Could you talk a little bit about Iraq as we're leaving the end of this month? Kind of how far we've come, and then the state of the nation as we depart.
Yeah. Well, first off, I think if we were back in 2006 at the height of sectarian violence, potential civil war in Iraq, nobody would have believed we are where we are today as we leave at the end of December 2011. So I always tell everybody we have to put it in perspective. And I think the military has made incredible strides working with the Iraqi military and the Iraqi government to provide a level of security that will be sustainable by the Iraqi security forces as we leave. There's still violence in Iraq, but the level of violence is significantly less than it has been for a very long time. And we believe they have the capacity to sustain peace within Iraq. I think that frankly, I believe it is time for us to allow them to recognize their sovereignty completely and allow them to move forward as a nation. They still have many difficult challenges ahead of them, both political and economic. But that's why we've left a robust presence with our embassy there to continue to assist them as we move forward to deal with their political and economic issues. And we will continue to do that. And we will continue to sustain strong military-to-military relationships like we do many other nations around the world. Just because we left doesn't mean we don't and will not sustain a long-term military relationship with Iraq, and we'll be focused on that.
General, you mentioned in regards to the drawdown that we'll have to determine how we're going to respond. How are we going to respond to Iran and North Korea, both those countries developing long-range missiles as of right now, with drawing down? How do we respond to those countries?
Well, again, we have to wait. I mean, I think, again, we will have a capability to respond. And we'll have a capability to respond to what we believe are the most important threats. And obviously Korea, North Korea, and Iran will be at the top of the list. And we'll sustain capability to do that. Now, if we go into sequestration, we have to take those cuts. That will have a significant impact on our military. In fact, I think the Secretary of Defense has been very clear. We'll have the smallest army we've had since 1940. We'll have the smallest Air Force we have ever had. We'll have the least number of ships than we've had in a very, very long time. So our capacity will be affected.
Let me interrupt right there. Is that acceptable to you? The smallest army since the 1940s?
Well, again, I have to, listen, it depends on the readiness levels we're able to sustain. And I think we'll have to take a look at it. I've been very clear in my testimony to Congress that I think we'd have to completely relook how we conduct security in our nation. We'll have to completely re-rick our strategy if we have to move on sequestration. And I have not changed my position. So if it comes to that, we're going to have to take a whole new look at how we do security and how the Department of Defense operates.
I'm Colleen Flaherty from the Colleen Daily Herald. And you mentioned sectarian violence in Iraq in 2007, which obviously led to the surge and things like that. I was wondering if you could sort of give us an update on Afghanistan and touching on the sectarian violence that sort of before yesterday was kind of unheard of.
Well, I think, again, as we move forward in Afghanistan, it is a very different environment than Iraq was. However, some of the issues are the same. And of course, what we're trying to do now is buy time and space for the military to develop the capacity necessary to ensure security in the nation. And we have made significant strides in building the Afghan Army and Afghan police over the last 2 years. We still have a bit more work to do. We also need time for the government to continue to progress. Although there's been fits and starts with the Afghan government, they are moving forward. So we have to help them to continue to develop and buy time for them so they can deal with some of the issues. And although we saw some low levels of sectarian violence for the first time in Afghanistan, I think we shouldn't overreact. We have to sit back, we have to take a look at it and understand what really happened, figure out why that happened, and then we can work with the Afghan government to go after what the root cause of that was and see if we can put programs into place to ensure it doesn't continue.
General, in regards to the men who are coming home and that are going to be leaving service, do you think enough is being done to prepare them for civilian life, considering that they have been on trigger for such a long time, and now a lot of them are going to be moving into law enforcement onto our streets? You worried a little bit about that transition?
First off, I think there's a couple points I'd like to make with that question. First is, as our soldiers come back, first thing I'm concerned with is the high unemployment rate that they're facing. There are different numbers. Some go as high as 24.6% of our veterans are unemployed out of Iraq and Afghanistan. Some are as low as 21.8%. Whatever it is, it's significantly higher than the normal unemployment rate. So it's incumbent on us to ensure that we have processes in place that allows them to properly transition into civil society, getting the jobs that we believe they are more than qualified for. We have soldiers come in, and their dedication, their discipline, their training, and their development of skills, I think, are more than capable of them garnering positions outside. And I think the latest legislation that gives tax breaks to organizations that hire veterans will help. So it's a matter of us now connecting the civil communities to our military installations in order to allow them to get the right mix and hire our soldiers. We take great care in doing, in every soldier that comes back, and doing assessments of where they are. And as they're ready to leave the service, I guarantee you that they have gone through assessments. We have done a judgment on their capacity and capabilities, and I'm more than comfortable with them taking on a variety of jobs, to include those that require that are involved in law enforcement.
We have time for one more, Doug.
As they come back, you were talking about the mental health issues. Some say that some of the families that I've spoken with personally say that the programs in place now are not enough, they're not working. Are there discussions within your level of the Army to up?
We have spent more time and effort in trying to figure out and right size what we need in order to take care of our soldiers coming back. especially dealing with traumatic brain injury and PTSD. We have put a lot of resources to it. We will continue to do this. There is not a black and white answer to PTSD, and there's not a black and white answer to TBI. And so we are continuing to work with the most prolific scientists, doctors involved, psychiatrists, psychologists involved in this in order for us to come up with the best solutions for our soldiers. We are branching out to other civilian activities who face it, but in similar ways, whether it be pro sports or other areas where they have this. And we're working as close as we can with all of these organizations to come up with the best solutions for our soldiers. We are making improvement every day. We certainly are not where we want to be. And this is going to be a problem that we know will continue on. And we're also working very closely with the Veterans Affairs. Veterans Affairs to help progress them as they leave the Army and move into under VA control, that we have smooth transitions and we continue to have the best available care for them. So we have systems that, for example, that are put in place here at Fort Hood that allow them access to talk to psychologists and then talk to psychiatrists. Would we like it to be a little bit faster in some cases? Absolutely. Do we need to build some capacity? Yes. And we're working to do that. And we're working to come up with things like we can do things via VTCs. If they're not available here, they might be available somewhere else. But there's some laws across state lines that we have to work through that we're hindered by. So there's things like that that we continue to do and work and operate. So we talk about this almost daily. The Vice Chief of Staff of the Army, General P. Corelli, has dedicated himself to this, and he works this every single day in trying to improve what we're doing. But we still have a ways to go. It's going to take time. It's a very complex and difficult issue that we'll continue to work through. Okay, well, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. It's good to see you all. Thank you.